It's so funny. Okay, so I'm saying corn a lot in this video, and I know people, like, especially on TikTok, are using corn, and even on here, are using corn as, like, a censor word, but I promise I'm actually talking about corn. So tell me if you've ever seen these before. In 2010, there were these commercials for High Fructose Corn Syrup from the Corn Refiners Association, where they were defending high fructose corn syrup in the most obnoxious way possible. Let me show you.
I bet you love them.
I do. Take 2 bites.
It's got high fructose corn syrup in it.
So?
Well, you know what they say about it.
What?
That it's
That it's made from corn, has the same calories as sugar or honey, and it's fine in moderation.
you only wrote one.
Get the facts. You're in for a sweet surprise.
Alrighty then, get the facts. You're in for a sweet surprise. Like, they love the little and the fake websites they come up with. It's this was honestly like the cutesy one where sure you can kind of see you're like, okay, maybe this conversation would take place and it doesn't seem like they hate each other. But this is not even the best one. I call this one corn popsicle, but this one's corn party. This one is the best and most unhinged one that I've seen of these propaganda commercials about high fructose corn syrup. You just gotta experience it.
Hey! Wow. You don't care what the kids eat, huh?
Excuse me?
That has high fructose corn syrup in it.
And?
You know what they say about it?
Like what?
I mean,
It's that it's made from corn, it's natural, and like sugar, it's fine in moderation.
love that top. Oh, well, thank you.
Get the facts. You're in for a sweet surprise.
I love that top. Like, what? Who wrote that? Honestly, to whatever ad agency came up with these series of commercials to the Corn Refiners Association, was there ever a moment where you were like, is the tone of this a little condescending? Why would you do, what is that? And it's just like, okay, no wonder Saturday Night Live chose this one to parody, because these were, generally, I want to say that they were all a little unhinged, but this one specifically, just this cattiness between two women at a kid's birthday party where it's just like, you don't care what your kids eat. Who says that? I'm not a mom, right? So I can't say that I've ever been in a situation where I feel judged by another parent or something, but like, someone's gotta tell me if this has ever happened to them. If another parent has walked up to them like, you don't care, do you? Like, whoa! Okay, with as defensive as people are just generally, who feels comfortable making a statement like that in somebody else's house? That was not her house. I can't. Or that was just, it's just full of fire there. There's something underneath. There's like a deep-seated hatred there that she has for this woman. Okay, but actually, apart from all the like really boiling emotional things under the surface, there's also the matter of these two characters now have had nothing to say when they're the ones that bring up that high fructose corn syrup is bad for you, but when they are asked why, what do people say about it, all of a sudden it's like, and listen, that's me in any argument, okay? Like, I can't remember anything. I forget a lot of things, alright? I write scripts for this because not only do I get off track, but I also forget things, alright? There's, like, things I want to source, people I want to give credit to, whatever. But creating a commercial where you want to, let's say, debate a point, you want to bring forth an idea, and it's in opposition to, let's say, a currently held belief, right, in society. Maybe, like, a ton of people in 2010, and we'll talk about that, maybe a ton of people in 2010 and earlier thought high fructose corn syrup was the devil, poison, etc. And maybe this commercial, all it meant to do was say, we know a lot of people think that high fructose corn syrup is like extremely bad for you or dangerous or sold in such crazy high amounts that it will harm you. And they could have simply brought up an opposing point and then defended their position. And yet they bring up something that is unsubstantiated, right? That high fructose corn syrup is bad for you. And then, in their little straw man, they don't have an argument. It's just, high fructose corn syrup is bad for you. I don't know why. I have no idea what I'm talking about. That's just it's so stupidly simple. It's like you're not really defending any kind of position or providing your own evidence when the other party, right, the other argument isn't even there. They didn't put anything forth. They didn't say that, like, it's way more calories than regular sugar, or it's harder on the body to digest. They didn't say anything that the Corn Refiners Association could actually come back with studies and say, like, but we've seen that it hasn't, right? Honestly, and I'm not even going to say that 100%, like, just coming up with your own studies funded by your own labs, like, is the best thing to do, right? Obviously, those things can be BS too. But not even bothering to come up with that, like, counter position. Just being like, look at these idiots. They don't even know why high fructose corn syrup's bad for them. But it's not. Like, it's just so... Ooh. It's lazy, isn't it? Okay, that's not even... There's another one. This one I got corn maze.
If you're like me, you care about the food your family eats. I was pretty confused by everything I'd been hearing about high fructose corn syrup. So, I did a little research to find out what independent experts like doctors, dietitians, and nutritionists had to say. I learned whether it's corn sugar or cane sugar, your body can't tell the difference. Sugar is sugar. And that's one less thing to worry about.
Learn more at cornsugar.com.
And that's one less thing to worry about. I don't know. That one was a weird one. It's kind of like, you're a parent, you've got other things on your mind. Who cares what you're putting down your kid's throat, right? Like, I'm sure it's fine. Sugar is sugar. Cornsugar.com. I'm not even attempting to bring in a conspiracy or be like, I'm a biochemist who knows exactly what corn sugar is and how it breaks down in the body and how it's, like, so bad for you. That's not even what I'm trying to say. But these are just so obviously propaganda and lazy attempts at that. When she was like, I was so confused about all the things I've been hearing about corn sugar. And it was like, what things? Please give me one thing. What have you been hearing? I don't know. How do I know what you're defending yourself against when you won't tell me what the claims are, you know? Now let's talk about the Saturday Night Live skit about the corn party propaganda commercial. They decided to parody this one specifically because, again, I mean, those moms were just, like, shading each other, low-key? I don't know. Just a quick disclaimer for what we're about to view together is that Saturday Night Live is extremely fatphobic. Always has been. It hasn't really cared to talk about it or even, I guess, not defend it. Saturday Night Live hasn't cared to avoid fat phobia ever in its humor, and there are a lot of reasons why someone can look at something like Saturday Night Live and be like, isn't really funny anymore, it's not really relevant, and there are people that absolutely love it still. That's all totally fine. I'm just talking about and showing this clip because specifically these propaganda commercials got so big and were so funny that Saturday Night Live, which is the biggest parody, like, national TV show, noticed and directly called them out. And Saturday Night Live doesn't always get these things right. Like, the whole response to the Try Guys thing was so, like, it was so obvious that one of, Ned Fulmer? One of Ned Fulmer's buddies is on the writing, like, team over at Saturday Night Live, because it was just nonsensical. It was barely, like, topically referencing the Try Guys scandal while pretending it was about something else to defend Ned. And it was just like, holy shit. So, I mean, again, Saturday Night Live does not always get it right. And in this case, I would say that it was, I mean, whatever, it's a direct parody. They were able to make fun of this, right, effectively. But the use of Bobby Moynihan at the end, it's just really, like, we're gonna see it, you're gonna know what I'm talking about, but for anybody who is, like, doesn't want to watch Fatphobia, right, like, does not want to watch, I would say, like, the last 15 to 20 seconds of this ad specifically has what I'm talking about, and I can just explain it to you after we view it. So.
Following is a message from the Corn Syrup Producers of America.
Wow, you don't care what the kids eat, huh? Excuse me? That has high fructose corn syrup in it.
And?
Well, you know the things they say about high fructose corn syrup.
Like what?
Well,
That it's made from corn, it's natural enough, and like sugar, it's fine in moderation?
I guess...
You guess what? That you should have kept your mouth shut?
I never...
Never what? Never heard of science? You know, this is a real jam for me. Trust scientists or stay-at-home mom Sheila from down the street who's having wine at 10 a.m.
I miss Nassim Pedrad.
Hey, that's a great sweater.
Thanks. It was my daughter's, but
Starts
she grew
now.
out of it.
Mommy! Can I have some more juicy drink?
Of course you can.
Yes!
She's cute.
Yep.
Get the facts. Check out our website and no other websites.
Okay, so even at the end there, they're like, check out our website, no other websites. So, like, very clearly we know that they're just clowning on the Corn Refiners Association for making these just very odd, condescending commercials. And they're also attempting to point out the link between childhood obesity and negative health effects with high fructose corn syrup and the overconsumption of sugar in general in the US. And yet, they chose to, like, crap all over kids who are fat by putting Bobby Moynihan in little girls' clothes. It's just, I'm like, oh my god. So, yes, sure. There was an attempt here at effective social commentary, and sure, what people find offensive changes, right? But instead of, like, telling you what you should and shouldn't find offensive, like, what I'm trying to say here is that there was a comment made that was important by a national TV show, and it just gets mired in their, like, crass, like, other BS that's just not as funny. I mean, whatever, double-edged sword. You want something that's popular and, like, Saturday Night Live, it's not really going to be scathing social commentary 100% of the time. Or even, like, most of it. Really, I just think the Saturday Night Live punchline at the end there kind of punched down and didn't really need to, right? I mean, here we are trying to make fun of a huge corporation that is putting out this propaganda, but we're also, like, crapping all over little kids that had no decision-making in, like, their own food habits. I don't know. Do these remind you of anything? Because to me, they're very reminiscent of Big Dairy and their recent commercial with Aubrey Plaza about wood milk. So let's watch it together.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Plaza. You know me as an actress, but I'm also the co-founder of Wood Milk, the world's first and only milk made from wood. Wood Milk started with a simple idea. I saw a tree and I asked myself, can I drink this? As it turns out, the answer is yes. And we're certain our eco-friendly, artisanal, free-range wood milk will be the only milk you'll want to drink for the rest of your life. Our wood milk is bottled right here in the forest. Now let's take a look at how wood milk is born. Not born, exactly. More like squished into a slime that's legal to sell. If a tree falls in the forest, can you make milk out of it? Is wood milk real? Absolutely not. Only real milk is real. Then what did I invest in?
Only real milk is real. Is your milk real? Are you kidding me? Hold up a sec. Of course they're doing this. It is so, like, they got somebody that might appeal to millennials and Gen Z and even Gen Alpha, Aubrey Plaza, and then they use her to be like, isn't anything other than dairy, like, total bullshit? Why are you crapping all over people who can't process dairy? That's like being like, people that are allergic to strawberries are fucking lame. What did they do to you, man? Like, the makers of peanut butter aren't out here like, any other kind of butter is bullshit. Is your peanut butter real? Is your butter real? That's so weird. I'm biased. I'm an alternative milk girly, alright? I do drink oat milk, almond milk, non-dairy milk in general because my body hates dairy. My body's like, boo, dairy. Yeah, my body hates dairy. It actively fights me every time I do have dairy in small amounts, large amounts, whatever. So I just avoid it entirely now. I did used to, as the big joke is with lactose intolerant people, I used to just like have it anyway, but yeah, no, it just, the reactions kind of just got worse and worse. But I made a t-shirt that says lactose intolerant, and now I wear it to ice cream shops when I ask for gelato. So anyway, yes, I'm a little biased, right? Okay, I have the wood milk, right? I'm an alternative milk drinker. But what Big Dairy is trying to say is that, like, nothing but milk, cow's milk, should be called milk. And my thing is, like, what about breast milk? Like, there's a reason, like, what? I know you don't think almonds can be milked, right? I don't care. It's just, like, cow's milk isn't the only kind of milk there is, right? So how about, you just kind of, like, just deal with words having multiple meanings? I don't understand this. You know what? I'm getting really passionate about this. But Big Dairy, you know what? They've lied in general. Like, the whole good for your bones, etc., etc., etc. You know what? It's really not healthy for, like, a bunch of people to drink milk. We lack the enzyme to process cow's milk. In fact, after our mother's breast milk, we lose that enzyme because it's like, you don't need it anymore, babe. You don't need to be milked. Go have your nutrients somewhere else. Somehow I got way too heated about that. But this is about corn, high fructose corn syrup, and the Corn Refiners Association of America, who, like Big Dairy, have taken it upon themselves to put out their own propaganda campaign. And they did this in 2010, and probably from the time around like 2008, 2015, the Corn Refiners Association was going ham. But it's not just that, because not only are they still around, they are the national trade organization of corn refiners. Anybody that breaks down corn from the crop into something else, like ethanol, they're a corn refiner. And this doesn't include the corn farmers. The Corn Growers Association is another one, but they're definitely always working hand in hand. And when I looked into some things the Corn Refiners Association does today, I was very much concerned because sure, they're not putting out these, like, condescending commercials anymore. Maybe they realize that people are a little smarter, but what they are doing behind the scenes is it's annoying. It's annoying, but it also has huge implications for the health and safety of an entire country, of multiple countries, because what they are doing is they decided to join a fun little debate between Mexico, Canada, and the US, where Mexico and Canada will have GMO farms of corn. They don't care. They buy GMO seeds from each other. They plant it. Awesome. They also feed GMO corn to their livestock. They will buy GMO corn that is already grown, right? Mexico also bought GMO corn for their livestock in the billions. This is $5 billion worth of corn. However, Mexico has banned the actual use of GMO corn on their farms. They will not farm GMO corn. And recently, they announced plans to ban GMO corn feeding to their livestock as well, meaning that they are just cutting off their purchases of GMO corn from the US and Canada, from anywhere. The reason they're doing this is because there are 55 native strains of corn in Mexico that small farmers are already producing sustainably for the demand in the country. That means that if they were to introduce something like GMO corn, Monsanto corn, they would be risking the biodiversity of Mexican corn. And they would also be risking the livelihood of the small farmers that are already doing well on their own. Mexico's not the only one to ban GMO corn and GMO crops in general. Germany, Italy, Algeria, Madagascar, France, they've also banned GMO crops. This isn't something that's only recently come up, because as early as 2007, a campaign called Sin Maíz, No hay país in Mexico, where concerned environmentalists, farmers, and scientists got together to talk about how the biodiversity of the corn in Mexico is what's giving a sustainable living to farmers, as well as ensuring the next generation of corn crops grows. Without that biodiversity, a disease could take out the entire strain of one crop and you'd be left with nothing else. That's what happened to an extremely popular strain of bananas called the Cavendish banana. This is also a matter of health because GMO farms specifically use an herbicide called glyphosate, which Mexico has banned as well. Why? Glyphosate is linked to cancer in individuals that have worked on those farms. I could tell you it's linked, and sure, in your mind you might say, okay, so maybe people get cancer from working on those farms, but maybe they would have gotten cancer anyway. So Bayer, creators of glyphosate as well as Zyklon B, has paid billions settling lawsuits from people who got cancer from using glyphosate. In fact, they settled with about $10.9 billion for those lawsuits. So, if you're wondering, how strong of a connection is it? It seems pretty strong. Something I found egregious finding out about this whole dispute between Mexico, the US, and Canada is that the US and Canada have said that Mexico has no scientific evidence or backing behind their decision to refuse the purchase of GMO corn for their livestock and to refuse GMO crop farming. And my response to that is, so what is a Mexican scientist then? Because that's the only difference. He is a scientist. She is a scientist. The people who are against GMO corn in Mexico, while they do include consumers, they do also include scientists. And I just have to wonder, that's so strange that the US and Canada would say that there's no scientific backing. I'm sure you might have heard, though, if you haven't necessarily been introduced through high fructose corn syrup, I'm sure you have heard that corn is one of the largest crops and most successful crops in the US that has one of the largest subsidies from the government as well. Farmers get paid to grow corn. But not just that. The big 5 crops that are subsidized by the government, and thus make them cheaper to grow, cheaper to sell, are corn, snow beans, corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, and rice. Most of these subsidies came about as a result of the Farm Bill. To expand on the Farm Bill was passed in 1933 originally and is updated by Congress every 5 years. It was updated in September of this year, 2023, and it has been revised 18 times. It establishes and maintains federal support for agricultural production, nutrition programs, conservation programs, rural development programs, and more. Most of these programs are put on by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The Farm Bill funds programs that helps farmers, but mostly helps poor families with a large amount of their funding put towards food stamps. And the second biggest distribution of funds from the Farm Bill is towards crop insurance. The crops insured are the same crops that are given subsidies by the Farm Bill, such as corn, wheat, soybeans, rice, which pays out when portions of crops die on farms. However, this is a practice that people criticize for encouraging overproduction. A 2015 report on effects of the Farm Bill and the Farm Bill today, done by the Haas Institute at Berkeley, found that corporate control and structural racialization were huge outcomes from the Farm Bill's payment programs and crop insurance. Their argument was that programs such as crop insurance encourage the overproduction of crops like corn and soybeans to maximize yield and profits. That emphasis on low cost and high yield is also directly responsible for the extremely exploitative business practices of many industrial farms, including toxic working conditions, wage theft, etc. They also found that the crop insurance is not given out in direct payments to farmers, rather is administered by banks like Wells Fargo, who profit in the billions on this administration. Most of the money budgeted for crop insurance in the bill goes to the banks, not the farmers. Remember how corporations can give unlimited amounts of money to politicians' campaigns? Wells Fargo spent $11.3 million that we know of on lobbying efforts in advance of the 2014 bill updates. And the American Bankers Association spent $14 million in lobbying efforts in the same cycle. And yet corporations have successfully maintained an image of the family farm or farmer owning their own land and crops, while secretly buying up land and farms and driving farmers and laborers dangerously hard. The independent farmer can't compete with the prices of industrially farmed crops, at the supermarket at least, and they have to come up with the cost of the land and equipment on their own. So corporations are the most prolific farmers now, and they're the ones making real money by industrializing every part of the process. Maybe some of you will remember the documentary from 2008 called Food Inc., which exposed the terrible conditions of overfed and overcrowded farms of chickens and cows that were Tyson and other large corporate farms. And those farms not only still exist, but they're still selling you the same animals in the same conditions. However, they're selling them to you as organic, farm fresh, all natural, grass-fed, free roam, whatever. And for anyone unfamiliar, Food Inc. was a huge documentary that exposed the exploitative and aggressive business practices of industrial farming and spent a good portion of the film talking about the abuses of the legal system that Monsanto takes advantage of to control and bankrupt small, independent farmers. Monsanto, of course, being a huge corporation that is responsible for the creation of several GMO crops. But I think these kinds of explosive documentaries of years past have created a bit of cynicism from general audiences in the US. So just like when Food Inc. was first released in 2008, there are still people who, when they bring up industrial farming practices and animals injected with steroids and kept in dirty, overcrowded pens, they're still kind of seen as crazy vegans who just don't understand that humans need meat and that's just how the meat's made. But I think the bigger point that we should have come away with from something like Food Inc. is that there are other ways of raising animals that will be sent to market. And those ways don't involve fattening them up with injections and packing 60 of them into a closet space to save money. In fact, the kind of large-scale industrial farming practices that we see today are way more recent than the ways that we used to. You know, the old way of just feeding them and giving them a space in which to live. But being able to inject an animal to fatten it up so much it can't even move while being crushed by other fattened animals for slaughter is actually a newer concept and definitely not a norm that we just can't escape. So when you encounter the attitude of who cares how the sausage is made, remember that apathy is a response still, and it's definitely not a neutral response. Apathy is meant to shut down the topic at hand, and it always benefits those in power, those who would obviously like to see someone silenced. So the way that Monsanto and gigantic GMO industrial farms operate is with dangerous, exploitative, and abusive practices. And they don't just compete with small farmers, they tear them down by any means possible. And for example, with Monsanto specifically, they'll claim that farms near their land are stealing their seeds and suing them out of business based on a honestly bullshit premise. And since 1995, $119 billion worth of subsidies have been given to corn farmers specifically. Corn farmers also get subsidies from the Department of Energy and from the renewable energy mandate because corn can be processed into ethanol. And now going back to sugar, which was not a part of the Big Five on the subsidized by the government list, sugar is an interesting one because sugar does have a lot of subsidies as well. Their subsidies, however, work in contrast to those of corn, where the subsidies that are given to people farming sugar actually make the final product, the sale to consumer, more expensive. So sugarcane isn't just more expensive for consumers to buy, it's more expensive for manufacturers and wholesalers as well. So in many cases, especially in the cases of something like a processed food, sugar from sugarcane is too expensive. And if you want to mass produce something cheaply, they will simply substitute it with high fructose corn syrup, which is significantly cheaper. Here's something crazy about high fructose corn syrup. So fructose is a type of sugar, right? There's sucrose, glucose, and fructose. Glucose and fructose are simple sugars, they're monosaccharides. Meanwhile, sucrose is a disaccharide. And this is why that's important. Glucose is the preferred way our body likes to take in sugar for energy. Everything that we eat gets converted into sugar, gets converted into energy. So glucose is actually absorbed faster and directly into your bloodstream. It also raises your blood sugar very quickly, versus fructose, which raises your blood sugar a little more gradually. However, it needs to be broken down into glucose by your liver before it can be used for energy. So eating a lot of fructose can actually be a strain on your liver, and it can also be more harmful when taken together with glucose, like in high fructose corn syrup that has both, because glucose can actually make the body absorb fructose faster than if you were to intake fructose alone. And not only faster, but you absorb more fructose with the presence of glucose. So sugar is not sugar, right? All sugar is not the same. And when you create a sugar that has multiple types, like high fructose corn syrup, versus something like a fruit that only has fructose, a certain kind of sugar, the body does know the difference and processes it differently. I found some great information about high fructose corn syrup, what it is, how it breaks down in the body, and what fructose malabsorption is from YouTuber Adam Ragusea. He has an amazing video about high fructose corn syrup that really helped me over the course of this video. I read an extremely fascinating article about how the crops that are subsidized by the government end up affecting our diet. And it makes perfect sense because when we produce more of something, i.e. something like corn and soybeans, we've produced so much of those things and we've done so cheaply and we're able to sell it cheaply as well, that more people are able to afford it and put it in their foods. And not just people, corporations will use these subsidized crops, these raw materials, to turn into processed foods. If you're wondering what subsidies there are for farmers who want to farm fruits and vegetables, something the USDA says should be about 50% of our diet. Well, you might be surprised to find that only 4% of the subsidies given at all, in the year 2019 at least, went to fruits and vegetables. In general, subsidies for fruits and vegetables are so minimal that you would have to get a private loan as an independent farmer or a small non-corporate farmer to farm fruits and vegetables sustainably. So here's how that ends up affecting things down the line as well. Because those kinds of whole foods crops that they can simply be sold to you as is, unprocessed foods, because those things are more expensive than things like corn, soybeans, rice, what ends up happening is that processed food distributors, large factories that can just pump out whatever to you that exists in a can or a box and, let's say, doesn't go bad immediately, it's cheaper for them to buy things from corn producers, etc., because of the same subsidies. And not only that, but because they can produce because they can do these things so cheaply, and because they do it in such a large scale, they actually emit more greenhouse gases than any farm, sure, but also they are some of the worst producers of greenhouse gases, the heaviest producers in the US. Some common additives in processed food include cornstarch, corn syrups, maltodextrins, hydrogenated oil. All of those things come from corn. Processed food also requires packaging, and usually that packaging is plastic, so ends up in a landfill. But if you're familiar with what the concept of a food desert is, sometimes, in fact, when we're looking for things like fruits and vegetables or things that aren't processed foods, it can be extremely difficult not only to find them in your own grocery store, in your general vicinity, but it can be difficult to afford them when things like ramen are 35 cents. Like, it is so much cheaper to eat a diet of something that will eventually kill you. Yes, most things will eventually kill you. But if we've seen the negative health outcomes from these processed foods specifically, why are we pretending that it's easy to eat healthy? This is another big reason why fat phobia is so insidious to me. It's that these corporations and industries have fed us propaganda for decades that the way we eat, the way that these negative health outcomes like diabetes and childhood obesity in general come about, are because of a lack of moderation. That we could simply just choose other foods next to our processed meals that they still want us to buy, and then everything would be fine. It doesn't matter. You can have a little bit. It's okay to have things in moderation. They don't sell things in moderation. They don't provide other options that would not have those negative health outcomes. Nobody's subsidizing non-processed foods or fruits and vegetables. What they're subsidizing are the crops that they care about, and what the government supports financially, again, are things that they care about, regardless of how they directly contribute to negative health outcomes in the US. It's financially motivated, as most things are. It seems that through many amendments and discussions surrounding the Farm Bill, especially in the 90s, that there were some decision made about program crops and non-program crops, being that which crops the government would subsidy and which they wouldn't. Several senators and farmers argued that that would kind of put crops that were subsidized by the government versus crops that aren't in kind of direct competition, meaning that really there was more of an incentive to grow program crops than not. And while some senators argued that the market would determine what kind of crops a farmer would grow, and therefore not only grow crops that are in the government programs, that's not what ended up happening. Of course, the crops that are federally funded are the ones that are being grown in vast amounts currently. So what started out as me clowning on some very obvious propaganda from the Corn Refiners Association of America, it's gone on a journey, right, to negative health outcomes in the US and the Farm Bill, etc., etc., etc. But I guess what I want to leave you all with, if I were to do a formal outro, is to always be skeptical when a corporation or something on TV on the internet is telling you how healthy it is, how there's nothing to be worried about, how anybody saying differently is wrong. It's like, it's protesting too much, you know? You just gotta, you know what I'm talking about. What the Corn Refiners Association and Big Dairy have shown us is that they actually are afraid of changes in the market, and especially of newer generations and how they can change the market, because they're already doing it, things are changing, and rather than change with them, they would rather just keep everything the way it is, mostly because they are getting subsidized by the government, they're getting free money, or they are, it's extremely profitable to be doing what they're doing, so if they don't have to be honest about it or transparent, and they can just make as much money as possible, they will. So just to impart on you a healthy sense of skepticism. But truly, thank you all for listening, for watching. I really appreciate when you guys leave comments, like the video, or even ask questions, because I love to interact. So if there's something that you want me to talk about, if there's something that you'd like me to clarify, something that you'd like to see different, I'd love to hear about it. Thank you for sticking around, and I hope to see you next week. Bye! I feel like the nails look very nice today. Ooh.